Hi, my name is Jen Baker, and I am the district behaviorist here in Benicia Unified. I've been here since 2014, and I think I've said this a couple of times. This is our third quick tips session. We've only had a couple of people come each week, but I will be recording these sessions, and obviously you know this if you're watching at home, they will be posted on our YouTube channel. So parents that can't attend live can access them on their own time. So I said this in the first couple of sessions that really one of the only good things about this whole COVID thing is I'm getting to interact with a lot more parents than I usually interact with. So just basically making up things to try and be supportive and give some of the parents and grandparents out there some tools to kind of help navigate this time. So what we're going to be talking about today are how a very simple thing like positive interactions can get you more of the behavior that you want. We're going to be talking about specifically teaching and acknowledging appropriate behavior. So I always start, this is a favorite quote that I came across a couple months ago: working, parenting or grandparenting, and teaching are three different jobs that cannot be done at the same time. It is not hard because you are doing it wrong. It is hard because it's too much. So do the best you can. And when you have to pick, because at some point you will, choose connection. And this was Dr. Emily W. King. What I like about this quote is that it talks about connection. And even though a lot of the strategies we'll be talking about are behavioral strategies, the point underneath all of them is to help build relationships and make connections with one another and with our kids. So I just already went over the format today. What I'm doing each week, because the sessions build on each other, is I'll do just a couple of minutes review of sessions 1 and 2, since what we talked about then kind of builds the foundation for what we're talking about in further sessions. And I have to acknowledge some of these organizations that you see here, because these are the people that have taught me what I'm presenting on, and a lot of the content and the slides come from these organizations, these PBIS organizations. So expectations for today, we have one person here live. So if anyone wants to come to future sessions and is uncomfortable with the idea of being recorded, you can turn off your camera like Michelle did. You can even rename yourself if you have privacy concerns. For people that are attending live, feel free to interject or raise your virtual hand at any time if you want to jump in. And as always with anything, take what works for your family and leave the rest. I only present on things that have an evidence base, meaning they've been researched and actually tested out in real world settings. So they are shown to be effective most of the time in a lot of different situations. But as you know, different things work for different people. And so if it's not a fit for your family, it's not a fit for your family. So what I like to talk about first, let me just move this down here, is positive behavior interventions and supports. And all of the quick tip sessions are based on positive behavior interventions and supports, or PBIS. Benicia is a PBIS district. The point of PBIS is to make schools effective and equitable learning environments for everybody. It's basically a framework for school sites to organize their supports and services with an emphasis on positive behavior. There's many similarities across the sites, but there's a team at each individual site that works to make it fit the culture of their school. So in PBIS in school, and when we're using it at home, rather than focusing on what not to do, we define and we teach behaviors and expectations that we want to see. So our schools, each school site has identified 3 to 5 positively stated, easy to remember expectations or rules that align with the kind of positive school climate that they want to create. And then for students to know the expectations, staff teach the expectations throughout the year, and there are systems to positively acknowledge students for appropriate behaviors. It's also worth saying that just because it's called PBIS doesn't mean that discipline and consequences aren't part of it. It is. But all disciplinary policies include clearly defined behaviors and clearly defined policies and procedures so that consequences are applied consistently for all students and by all personnel. So I'm just going to show you a couple sites before we get into what it looks like in the home. Let me take you through just a couple pictures from our sites. This is from the high school. Their expectations at the high school are, it's called RISE, respect, include, support, and engage. At the middle school, they have an acronym: be respectful, make good choices, and stay responsible. At Matthew Turner, they call it being a role model. So be kind, be safe, be respectful, be responsible. Mary Farmer is be safe, be kind, and be responsible. Joe Henderson, respectful, responsible, safe, and ready to learn. And the Semple Dragons are safe, respectful, and responsible. So when we talk about PBIS in the home, the point is the same as it is in the school. We want to help parents create and maintain a safe and structured and consistent home environment. We want to strengthen adult and child relationships. It benefits all children because we're focusing on teaching positive behaviors and building life skills. And it's even more effective when processes and language are consistent with the school setting. All right, I'm actually going to skip right here. I'm going to do a quick review. So one of our previous sessions, we talked about schedules and routines. So schedules provide our mind and body with predictability and consistency, which is really important in creating a feeling of safety, which especially right now is as important as ever. For most families, COVID-19 has shifted our normal schedules, which interfere with us getting our needs met. So some families have a really regimented schedule during the school year where they get up around the same time and they have routines. So COVID may be allowing us to relax on this a little bit. And while it's a welcome change, lack of routine for too long a period can be really problematic. Regardless of whatever your situation is, our schedules have changed, and it can do a lot for us to promote brain regulation, reduce anxiety, reduce problem behaviors by simply making sure we have clear schedules in place. There's someone, I think, in an upcoming video that talks about common sense applied in uncommon ways or something like that. So none of this is rocket science, and it's probably things that you've heard before, but it's amazing how much it can help. These are a couple of examples from the Center on PBIS. There's an elementary and a secondary routine that you can see. Notice that there's consistency within the schedule, but on these examples, you can adjust because there aren't specific times on there, and there is some flexibility within the routine so that it's not too rigid or too limiting. Some families find that it's more that they get better behavior if they actually have the times in there. And again, this is one of the things that you have to look at what your family needs, and especially during some of the morning routines, or like, you know, when kids are at school, we have a bell schedule. So during the academic times, it might make more sense to put times in. But regardless, having a clear schedule can help immensely in promoting behavior. It's one of our foundational pieces. During another one of our quick tip sessions, we talked about a family expectations matrix, and it's basically a visual reminder of your family's values and your rules and your routines. It helps keep everyone focused. It gives you language to use. It helps you prioritize, and it's good for all ages. This is an example of one. I'm not going to talk too much about it because I'll show the resources at the end. We do have a parent webpage that I created. And as far as developing schedules or something like a matrix for your home, we have a quick tips video on that. And there's a lot of resources that take you through step-by-step how to do it. But this is what one example would look like, where you can see there's the different routines, AM and PM movement, structured learning, social connection, bedtime routine. And then we have our family's values: respectful, responsible, and safe. And then for each box, we identify what respectful would look like during AM and PM movement. Identify the activity or space so as not to disrupt others. Structured learning: be respectful by putting forth your best effort and completing your task in a timely manner. So again, you'll want to ensure that each routine within your schedule fits your family's home schedule, and that it has steps defined, and that we have this in writing and posted and revisited frequently. So the next step, before we get into the next part, which is about, now that we have our foundational pieces, we have our schedules, we have our routines established, and we have our family matrix. So I found this slide. This is Herner, who said this: if a child does not know how to read, we teach. If a child does not know how to swim, we teach. If a child does not know how to multiply, we teach. If a child does not know how to drive, we teach. If a child does not know how to behave, we teach. We punish. What do we do? And his point was, why can't we finish the last sentence as automatically as we do the others? And this is not to say that consequences or corrections are not ever appropriate, but they need to be in balance with everything else that we're doing, because they do tend to be more short-term solutions. So let's get into a couple of the things that we can do that have more lasting impact. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the magic ratio. And this is talking about, so when we're talking about the magic ratio, we're talking about positive and negative interactions. And the rule of thumb is that we should be interacting with kids more often when they're behaving appropriately than when they're behaving inappropriately. And this is easier said than done, because usually when kids are behaving appropriately, we can finally relax and go, oh my gosh, a moment of peace. Where it's a lot harder to ignore when there's problematic behavior or loud behavior going on. It's a lot easier to remember to respond to that. So easier said than done, but this is a major point. When we talk about positive interactions, we're talking about either specific feedback as to what your child or teen did right, or they can be more non-contingent or just because, a smile, a kiss, a hug, giving attention, whatever. So we have specific feedback that's contingent on some kind of behavior. And then we have the stuff that just happens incidentally for no reason all throughout the day, just to make a connection. When we're talking about negative interactions, we are talking about either like behavior corrections, either ignoring or not ignoring behavior. These are things that we're doing that are construed as negative or that follow a negative behavior. So what's the ratio? So the rule of thumb is that children and teens should experience 5 positives for every negative. And interactions are considered positive or negative, both by what the content is, but also based on the behavior in which the child or teen is engaged at the time we attend to them. And just to underscore, I know I've said this a couple of times, but this is a common misconception when people hear about positive behavior interventions and supports. They think, oh, we're just going to spoil kids and they need consequences. And negative corrections or interactions are not wrong and are sometimes necessary, but the key to getting the best behavior is the ratio of the positive to negative interactions. So this is one of my favorite studies. And it just shows that this is true for getting better behavior out of our kids, but this is also true in businesses. It's true in marriages and relationships. So John Gottman, who we'll hear from in a minute, is done a lot of work in this area. And one of the best studies was this longitudinal study. They had 700 newlywed couples. They watched them interacting for 15 minutes, and they basically gave them a score by looking at the positive and the negative interactions. So 15 minutes, that's it, 700 couples. A decade later, based only on that information, from that 15-minute conversation, they were able to predict divorce with 94% accuracy, based only on the interactions, positive and negative. There's also some research in businesses, just in a nutshell. They looked at high-performing teams versus low-performing teams and businesses. I don't know what kind of businesses they were. But again, they looked at the positive and negative interactions. And what they found was that high-performing teams were the ones that maintained that ratio of a higher positive to negative interaction. And they also found one of the side effects with the high performing teams where there were more positive interactions with one another. They had individuals that were more likely to innovate, to throw ideas around, to take risks, where in the lower performing teams where there was a lot of criticism and corrections, people kind of just did the bare minimum to stay under the wire, and there wasn't a lot of teamwork or innovation or anything. So this is John. Now let's see if this works, if you can hear this. So Michelle, you'll have to break in if you can't hear this, but this is the man, Dr. Gottman, who did the study on the newlyweds.
Let me start by talking about what it is we learned that allows us to predict divorce or stability with very high accuracy. The first thing we found was that if you take a look at the ratio of positive stuff during conflict, things like interest, asking questions, being nice to one another, being kind, being affectionate, being empathetic, and you look at all the negative stuff like criticism, hostility, anger, hurt feelings, and you take the ratio of positive to negative, in relationships that stay together, that ratio turns out to be 5 to 1. There's 5 times as many positive things going on in relationships that work as negative. So that's an interesting equation. And it sort of suggests that if you do something negative to hurt your partner's feelings, that you have to make up for it with 5 positive things. So the equation is not balanced in terms of positive and negative. Negative has a lot more ability to inflict pain and damage than positive things have to heal and bring you closer. Now, the couples who wound up divorced, that ratio was 0.8 to 1. So there was a little more negativity than positivity in couples who were heading for divorce.
So here's another quick one on positive interactions. This was a clip from Fox News. It's very short.
Well, it's called the carrot principle. We're going to find out how it can help improve your business relationships. That's next, right here on Fox Business. They say catch more flies with honey. The same can hold true to relationships with employees, or the reverse. Joining us now for how businesses can increase their bottom line using praise is Chester Eldon, author of the book, The Carrot Principle. And lest it sound a little too simplistic, and it does, the Wall Street Journal, a lot of business magazines, and a lot of professors of management say, well, you're really onto something. Why is something so obvious so important right now?
Well, it's great news, actually. It's common sense, uncommonly practiced. And the reason the Wall Street Journal was so excited about our data was we connected the dots between recognizing excellent behavior and the bottom line. We had 31 different...
You're not just whistling Dixie here. You've got evidence to back it up.
Absolutely. We proved it. It's not allegorical anymore. Like, oh, it would be nice to be nice to our employees. Happy employees are better employees. No. We found that organizations that recognize excellence had a 3-to-1 advantage in return on equity, return on assets, 7-to-1 advantage in operating margin. So again, we proved it within 2 or 3%. All these stats guys have their margin of error. But no, it works because rewarded behavior gets repeated. And now more than ever, David, you need to see your employees as assets, not as expenses.
But is there ever a time when the stick is more effective than the carrot?
Well, what you find is the stick is real short term. And what we find is that carrot managers, right, those that reward more and look for the good, build trust.
All right. So it works in businesses, it works in marriages. So here's a study that talks about actually with kids, and this was with toddlers. This was published in the Journal of Child Development, where they videotaped more than 50 toddlers interacting with their parents. And then they did follow-ups at ages 1, 2, and 3. And they distinguished between the interactions that focused on a child's actions, such as good job, or I like how you played, as opposed to putting the praise on the individual, saying good boy or good girl. And what they found is 5 years later, children that were praised more for what they did or their behavior, as opposed to who they were, ended up being, quote, more equipped to take on challenges. And the way they defined that, they were more likely to believe in the ability of individuals to learn and become more intelligent, and in people's ability to grow and evolve in general. They were able to come up with more strategies for dealing with setbacks, and indicated they welcomed challenges over simple tasks. So that leads us into the importance of behavior-specific praise. So how does this actually fit for behavior management in our home? Why do we want to pay attention to the positive behavior? Because behaviors that are reinforced are repeated. And by us acknowledging, we're reinforcing the teaching of new behaviors and positive behaviors. It helps the behavior become a habit and recur more often in the future. We don't just want kids to think that they're doing something to get something or doing something to get our approval. We want to use the kind of specific praise that will get them to internalize more and make behaving well a habit. It can harness the influence of kids who are showing expected behaviors to encourage siblings who are not. This is a great strategy. This isn't going to work so hot with your teens probably, but if you have younger kids and there's one kid doing what they need to be doing and the other kid not, rather than focusing on the kid who's not, focusing on the kid who's doing what they need to be doing and making sure that behavior is reinforced, you'd be amazed how it gets the other people who aren't behaving very often on board. It strengthens positive behaviors. And if we have more positive behaviors without even having to address the negative behaviors, it's only 24 hours in a day. So if you're increasing positive behaviors, there are fewer negative behaviors without even having to deal with it directly. It improves the climate in your home, and it helps you connect positively with your kids or your grandkids. So behavior-specific praise helps us focus on the action. So again, think of that study as we're not praising kids for being inherently smart. We're praising them for behaviors and actions that they have control over. It's one of the most powerful behavior change tools that you will have. And it seems so nuts because it seems so simple and so obvious. It enhances self-esteem and helps build self-control. But one of the greatest side effects for you, it feels a lot different at the end of the day when we're focusing on the positive behavior. I know when there's a day when I've been seeing the positive and picking out or seeing the negative and picking out the negative in people, you feel totally different at the end of the day than if you're noticing the positives and recognizing the positives. So here's a quick video to show you what behavior-specific praise looks like. And I couldn't find a home video, so this is a school video, but you'll get the idea.
All right, great job.
Oh, Mr. Lutz must like his blue shirt. Why didn't Mr. Lutz like my blue shirt? Maybe he likes green better.
Sorry, I like that.
Why didn't Mr. Lutz like my green shirt? Maybe he likes.
Sorry, it's a great job walking safely in the hallway. Good work. Sorry, thanks for being responsible with dumping your tray and picking up the trash. Wow, sorry, thanks for opening the door. It's very respectful of you and your whole class.
Hey, Mom, can I borrow you for a second?
Yeah.
Hey, I've noticed today you've had a great day following all of our building-wide expectations. You've been safe, you've been respectful, you've been responsible. I've seen you walking safe in the hallway. I've seen you picking up trash. I've also seen you holding doors for your classmates. We really appreciate it.
Being specific when giving feedback reinforces the teaching and learning of appropriate school behavior, increasing the likelihood it will happen again.
So the point there, obviously it's a little hokey, but these are one of the PBIS videos that schools create to share with staff as a part of the ongoing teaching. But you can see the difference between just saying good job or nice this, nice that, and saying you're being so respectful by opening the door. I really appreciate it. It links it to your here they're linking it to the school expectations, but here you would be linking it to your home expectations, and you're being really specific. So there's no misconception about what it is that you're acknowledging. So there's one more study. We're going a little long, but we're almost done. So I think we have time for this. This is one of my favorite studies by Carol Dweck.
So check this out. Carol Dweck and her colleagues wanted to look into the impacts that praise had on children's development. So what they did is they took over 400 fifth grade students from all across the nation, and they did a really simple yet interesting study. Here's how it went down. They gave all the kids a really easy nonverbal IQ test. There were 10 questions, and at the end of the test, they praised all the children in one of two ways. The first group was praised for their intelligence. So they said, wow, great job. You must be really smart at this. Now, the second group was praised for their effort. So they said, wow, great job. You must have worked really hard at this. Now, this is a really subtle difference, but the impact it had is incredible. So after praising the kids and getting them divided up into the two groups, they gave them all an option for their next test. The first option was, hey, this next test is going to be a little bit harder, but it's going to be a great opportunity to learn and grow. Now, the second option was, this next test will be similar to the first, and you will surely do well on it. Now, the interesting thing is, out of the group that was praised for their intelligence, 67% of them chose the easier option, while 92% of the kids who were praised for their effort chose the harder test. This is unbelievable to think about, how just the subtle difference in the way that they were praised had such an impact. Carol Dweck explains why this happened.
The child or adult hears, oh, you think I'm brilliant and talented. That's why you admire me. That's why you value me. I better not do anything that will disprove this evaluation. As a result, they enter a fixed mindset, they play it safe in the future, and they limit the growth of their talents. Whereas focusing on the strategies they use, the way they're stretching themselves and taking on hard tasks, the intense practice they're doing, those are the kinds of things that say to a child or an older athlete, it's about the process of growth. As a result, they don't feel, oh, if I make a mistake, you won't think I'm talented. They think, oh, if I don't take on hard things and stick to them, I'm not going to grow.
Next, Dweck and her colleagues gave all the kids a really difficult test. It was one that they would surely fail, but they wanted to look at how the different kids attacked this challenge. Dweck noticed that the group that was praised for effort worked harder, longer, and actually enjoyed this test more than the group that was praised for their intelligence. This group got really frustrated with this test and had the tendency to give up early. After this artificially induced failure round, all of the kids were given a third and final test. Now, this test was the same level of difficulty as the first one, but check out the results. The group that was praised for their intelligence actually did worse on this test than the first one. Their average score actually dropped by 20%, while the group that was praised for their effort did significantly better, raising their average score by nearly 30%. This is a 50% difference in performance that was caused by a few subtle differences in the way that they were praised. This study shows how praise can either make or break a child's development. I mean, we all do it. We all want to be positive with the children we work with, so teachers, coaches, parents are always looking for ways to support their kids and tend to praise them quite a bit. So we need to look at research like this and realize, okay, praise is a good thing and there's nothing wrong with being positive, but we need to be very careful about praising someone's intelligence or abilities and focus more on the process and the effort that they put forth. I think this is a pretty easy fix that will help us develop growth mindsets within the kids that we work with. And as all the research shows, having a growth mindset has a big time impact on the development of a child, whether it's on the court, in the classroom, or just in life. Thanks so much for following along and watching this video. For more like this, visit championshipbasketballschool.com.
All right, so let's do a quick activity. Let me see if we have time. Okay, so maybe we'll just go through this since we only have one person here live today. Maybe I'll just go through these examples. So what this is my idea was if we had more people here, I was going to have people type their answer in the chat. So Michelle, if you want to do that, feel free. Otherwise, I'm just going to go through the examples and give an example of an answer. So here's the situation. Your child sits down at his desk for Zoom with all the required materials, and you say, good job. How would we change this to a behavior-specific praise statement? So an example would be, thank you for being so responsible. Oh, I see something here. Did Michelle answer? Let's see. There we go. Thank you for being ready to learn. I love it. And I would even add, you have everything that you need. Perfect. Thanks, Michelle. Okay, let's do the next one. Your teen gets an 85% on a math test and you say, you're so smart. What could we say instead that was a behavior-specific praise statement? So I'll do this one right here. So an example would be, yeah, great effort on the math test, or I'm so impressed. I know you studied really hard and you stayed after school to ask your teacher for help. Yep, again, we want to be praising specifically and we want to be focusing on behaviors rather than natural abilities. Here's another one. Your teen gets up on time, gets dressed, and has breakfast without you needing to say a word. So you pat them on the back as you go by. What could we do to make it a behavior-specific praise statement? Give it a minute. Thank you for being responsible and being ready. Awesome. That was Michelle's. All right. So just to wrap up here, because we're almost out of time. So in summary, we talked about establishing a foundation, and I encourage anybody that's watching this to check out the parent webpage. I will show you what it looks like in a minute. Behavior-specific praise is great, but we always want to start with the foundation. So make sure in your home, you have your routines, your schedules, and you may even consider doing an expectation or matrix. And there's great ways on the web page to talk about how to do this as a family. It's not just us writing it and putting it on the wall, but there's different ways that you can do it to do it as a family activity and get everybody's buy-in and opinions on it. So after we have those foundations, then we move to teaching and acknowledging. The next few quick tip sessions are going to be about this, but the keys from today are try to interact with your kids or your teens more often when they're behaving appropriately than when they are behaving inappropriately. Make your praise specific and focus on behaviors rather than focusing on internal characteristics, personality traits, things like that. We want to specifically praise things that our kids have something they can control or something that they can control. Negative interactions and corrections are not wrong, but the key is the ratio. And I will have a quick tip session down the line that talks about positive discipline and ways to do it in a way that works. But we talk about all the foundational skills first. And then the final one is to be patient with yourself. Everyone has a lot on their plate right now, and things are pretty topsy-turvy, and it's a lot to have kids at home and be parenting and working yourself and trying to teach, and it's this whole new set of responsibilities. So in trying any of these things, just be gentle with yourself and give yourself a break. The questions to always be asking: do my children know my expectations? Do my children know the routines for our home? Do I acknowledge my children for good behavior? What's my ratio? Do I use specific praise when I see a behavior that I want to see repeated? And do I have a consistent way to handle inappropriate behavior? Because even all the positive strategies and preventative and teaching things that we do, problem behavior is still going to happen because kids are kids and they're growing and learning. So we do need to have a plan for that as well. So this is the parent web page, and there's a lot more on here. What you can see, it's the green box below that has the different columns. It can kind of be a lot to look at when you first see it, but the way that it's organized is there's different columns. So you can see, consider a behavior contract. My child is not motivated. Autism spectrum disorder, behavior sheets, self-monitoring, and coping skills. So what you'll find, you can scroll right to left or up and down on the web page, and under the columns, you'll find videos and like worksheets or directions or downloadables. There's all kinds of things to help you implement the strategies that are described. And like you can see right there, I've added a column for the quick tips material. So I'll put the slides from today actually on this web page. So if you do not have the link to this web page, just email me at Jen Baker, JenBaker, at BeniciaUnified.org, and I will reshare this. This went out in an email to everybody probably about a month ago now. So there's the web page that has a lot of great resources on it. The other thing that I'm offering is called office hours, and the flyer is linked on this web page, but basically I'm doing 30-minute consults with anybody. You just need to fill out a little form. And again, the flyer is on the web page, but you fill out a form and we schedule a 30-minute consult to talk about what's currently going on in your home and how to apply some of the strategies we're talking about in the quick tips sessions.